in this process of serving children from so many different populations, I came up with a phrase. It's now on the back of our t-shirts. It's on all of our cups. It's everywhere you see us. You can know that we're attached to the phrase practice makes progress. Because so oftentimes we'll get children in the water that are high performers, which brings high anxiety, which can bring about roadblocks to them feeling the ability to or getting out of their head enough to progress. So we started saying this to let them see, well, if I can do these 5 bobs by myself, then maybe I can put my face in the water and hold my breath for 5 seconds, right? Like you just really amplify each progressive skill that they do to help them feel confident to go on to the next one.
Building up that trust and
building the trust. Yep.
Welcome to AOAP's Discussion from the Deep End, a podcast for aquatic professionals by aquatic professionals. We're here to share real stories and practical ideas to help you run safer and stronger aquatic programs and facilities. I'm Daniel Peters, your host, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Kirsten Barnes. AOAP is a nonprofit dedicated to improving aquatic education, recreation, and safety through training, resources, and community. Today's conversation is about what it takes to teach swimmers with different learning needs in a way that builds confidence, trust, and real progress. We'll talk about adaptive instruction, TBRI, and how instructors can create positive learning experiences that support swimmers, families, and staff.
Today, we're excited to welcome Christy Baca, a 2026 AOAP Power Speaker, Texas A&M graduate, and aquatics educator whose background in special education shapes the way she approaches swim instruction and water safety. Christy's taught private lessons since 2013 and has built her work around helping swimmers of all ages and learning styles feel more confident, supported, and successful in the water. Her approach is especially grounded in trauma-based relational intervention, also known as TBRI, which emphasizes connection, correction, and empowerment as a way to support children with unique learning needs. Christy has seen how those principles can help swimmers who experience anxiety, ADHD, sensory processing differences, trauma, or other challenges, and how they can create a more positive learning environment for both students and instructors. In addition to her lesson work, Christy's been involved in community outreach, education consulting, curriculum development, and local advocacy. She brings a broad perspective on what it takes to build swim instruction that is both practical and deeply responsive to the needs of families and communities. Welcome, Christy.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we're happy to have you as well. Christy, to start, can you share a little bit about how you got into aquatics and what drew you to swim instructing?
So I grew up swimming in the summers in Marble Falls. I grew up on the lake, and then I grew up participating in their summer swim team for as long as I can remember in elementary school and junior high. And then as I progressed through college, I opted to take all of my PE credits in the pool. So I've been swimming for a long time. But what started this is my girls quit going to a friend's pool with me, and it just got to be a little bit lonely and just kind of weird. But my friends with kids kept coming. And one summer I worked with one of my friend's sons, and she was like, wow, you did really good with that. And then she told another friend who told another friend. And 4 years later, I had a pool in my backyard. So we've gone from, I don't know that this is what I'm going to be doing, because I was still teaching at the time. I was actually speaking and helping with a lot of health education, advocacy, and health education curriculum. I had no idea this was in my future, but it's actually become the only future I think I know to have. So I currently have 177 students, and 5 instructors.
Awesome, Christy.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
You know, you talked a little bit about teaching. Your background in special education seems like it would really shape the way that you teach. How did that influence your approach in the pool?
So having spent time with children in the classroom and consulting for a private school, observing special needs students, I have had 15 to 20 years opportunity to see how teachers and parents and students with special needs interact with each other in that whole circle. And so having the knowledge base I was given in my education background, I'm able to bring principles like patience and child-led lessons and individualization, just seeing the needs of each child versus modeling a program that's, one size fits all. So it's a program that's actually every kid that walks through our gate is going to get a different approach.
It's awesome. What led you to go from being able just to teach the lessons to starting your own school?
So that came about, actually, I'll be real transparent with you. My nail tech is one of my business mentors, and she knows that. 5 years ago, I brought Violet on, who I had no idea would be with me 5 years. She's the daughter of one of my friends. I watched her go through the swim team, student council, and other leadership forums in her school. And now she's going to be a sophomore at Texas A&M. And when I brought her on, it was actually the scariest thing I've ever done because I feared that I wouldn't be able to build trust with the parents. I had created this community of parents that kept telling people that kept telling people. At that time, I think we had around 75 kids. And so it was easy to navigate, right? Just, okay, these are my bubble of parents. And this other bubble of parents is a bubble that knows this bubble of parents. I hope I'm speaking in a language everyone understands. We're in a small community. And we're also in a community that is 30 miles south of the Oklahoma border and just north of Dallas. So we began serving two states. So hiring Violet was my first step of confidence in starting what is now a swim school. 2 years into her being with me, we started a swim squad, which was it's very small. It's non-competitive. But from that, word got out what we were doing. And also within that time frame, I achieved some certifications with some angelfish, which brought about word of adaptive swim, and that just grew the populations exponentially.
Yeah, there's something to be said for those bubbles of parents that all
Hmm.
know each other, right? Moms talk to moms more than anybody else. That's
They do. They really
awesome.
do.
So, you talked about getting started and kind of taking those first steps. What were some of those challenges that you had to work through as you first started your school?
One of the biggest challenges I had was time and space, which I think we can all understand. Space is a big deal. I think even if you have a large facility, because one of the things I learned in research as I approached my husband to build me a pool was that, there will never not be a need for swim lessons. And I read that somewhere and I wrote it down and I shared it with him and he knows, he understands. He's 110% literally in my pool, my support team. So some of the challenges I faced were being able to help parents understand that not all children are going to progress at the same time. So you may have a family whose child progresses quicker than yours or slower than yours, getting past some of the timeline challenges with children, also getting past some of the weather issues we have, parents flexing and understanding that, oftentimes we may have 2 or 3 bad weather days in a week, and that compounds, and we only have one weather makeup day, right? So there's that. Also, I found some parents challenged to be able to afford the private one-on-one instruction that we provide. And I'll talk about how we alleviated that later on. But those were some of my biggest challenges. And then staffing, finding staff that I could invest in and trust in that would build trust within our parent community.
Yeah, building that team around you is so important, especially as you start in and you start to grow. With that growth, what was able to keep your focus on the adaptive part of the swim instruction and the water safety?
So, I promise you, Aileen and Cindy are not paying me, but honestly, COVID came and, all the pools in the nation pretty much shut down, right? So, within a 30-mile radius, all of our pools shut down. And actually, I was a precinct chair at the time and reached out to our state representative because I was super stressed. All these pools are shutting down, including our city pool and all the cities, like I said, within a 30 to 60-mile radius. And so I began to become a little anxious. Like, well, what do I do? Do I shut my pool down? I mean, we all can remember the wave of unknowns and severe anxiety I think we faced with that. So I reached out to my state representative and he said, well, who owns that pool? And I said, I do. And he said, okay, who owns that pool? He said, say it again. I do. And he said, well, then you do what you know to do. So I kept my pool open, and that year my roster tripled. And that was the year prior to me hiring Violet. That year, also, my children with anxiety, fear, ADHD increased drastically. I also had 3 or 4 kids with autism come through my gate. So that fall of COVID, I found some angelfish and I began training with them. And since then, I think I have all the levels they offer, and we confer frequently through email. And Aylin and Cindy are just great because they're always offering more training to help build on our skills. So honestly, that and then supporting myself around community business owners like an OT, a pediatric occupational therapy clinic here. I can confer with one of those ladies. I confer with a primary care physician, and I also confer with just parents often and a local counselor that helps me understand some of the things that we face in the water.
I love it. So you've not just built your community of students and families, but you've built a community of support resources around you as well.
And I'm very fortunate for that and thankful.
That's fantastic. Well, so let's talk a little bit about TBRI. For listeners who aren't familiar with it, how would you explain this idea in a swim lesson setting?
So, TBRI, so let me just briefly explain trauma, which I didn't know, even having been adopted and raised in a home with foster kids that come with trauma. Okay, so I've been exposed to trauma, and I was exposed to trauma in the public school setting. I think what most of us would consider normal trauma, like neglect or needing food or abuse, right? Or divorced family. But actually, I learned in my training trauma can start in utero with a mom who has a stressful pregnancy, and these things have been solidified through scientific studies, right? It can also be a result of a traumatic birth experience, right? So, a lot of things that we don't even think about or don't know. So, I began researching more about how I can approach kids with fear, anxiety, ADHD, and even sensory processing when I started serving foster children, and that population grew, and then adopted children. When you have a child come through your gate that has fetal alcohol syndrome, you need to know how to approach that lesson, and you need to know how to approach the timeline for that child, those kinds of things. So we approach our lessons through a series of principles in TBRI, starting with connection. We connect with our kids through trust building activities. And it may be quicker for some, maybe slow for others. So we may start trust building with talking about, what did you have to eat today? What is your favorite thing? Just questions to inquire, to get the child to share with us how we can continue connecting with them as we serve them, 4, 6, 8 lessons through. We have talking points, right? We also connect with play. We might create scenarios with mama duck, daddy duck, family duck. We have lots of toys. Poolside, we have balls. We have all kinds of things where we can connect with them and play. So we connect with them, and then we implement empowerment principles where we offer positive reinforcement, or we might offer choices that bring about opportunities for them to feel ownership of what they're doing. And these choice questions are sometimes tricky because sometimes you may find yourself thinking, well, do I have a good choice to give them? Are they going to make the best choice? But as you progress through the methods and the principles and get to know your kids, you can come up with questions and choices that almost always bring them to a place of ownership of a positive choice, right? So then we move into correction. You want to connect with the child first, empower them, and then bring the correction in. And that correction is even tied in with how you've connected with them and empowered them. So you might say, hey, I like the way that you did that wall crawl. Let's try doing our bobs by getting our eyes in the water this time, right? So you're not saying you didn't put your nose in the water and your eyes. You're saying, I saw you do something great. You're wall crawling. Let's add a bob. Can you put your eyes in the water? And oftentimes, and when I say oftentimes, I mean a lot, you'll hear all of us say eyes in the water. I mean, that's a correction, right? But it's the way you say it, right? It's really about how you approach the child with tone, with attitude, and with relationability in this process of serving children from so many different populations. I came up with a phrase. It's now on the back of our t-shirts. It's on all of our cups. It's everywhere you see us. You can know that we're attached to the phrase practice makes progress. Because so oftentimes we'll get children in the water that are high performers, which brings high anxiety, which can bring about roadblocks to them feeling the ability to or getting out of their head enough to progress. And so we started saying this to let them see, oh, well, if I can do these 5 bobs by myself, then maybe I can put my face in the water and hold my breath for 5 seconds, right? Like you just really amplify each progressive skill that they do to help them feel confident to go on to the next one.
Building up that trust. And
Building the trust. Yep.
yeah, that's what it sounds like. So when you were trying to find what the right fit would be for the kind of instruction you were trying to provide, why did TBRI feel like it was the fit?
So, because not just the population of kids I was speaking of, the foster and adopted populations, but most all children come with something. a previous traumatic experience in the water. They may have come from a broken home. They may have come from a hard car ride over, right? So that coupled with my increasing population of special needs like Down syndrome, children with autism, they all come with a different timeline and different need for approach. So the combination of different populations we have really led me to the trauma informed trust based relational intervention. Mhm.
I love that you are working a lot with a lot of populations, anxiety, ADHD, sensory processing, all the trauma. How does that shape the way that you plan and deliver each individual lesson? Do you have those conversations with parents before they begin? Are you exploring their experiences during your lessons? How do you plan around those things?
So we plan by starting with our intake form. And I'll be the first to say it can be more comprehensive, but it is more comprehensive every year. And that is one of the things we talk about at the end of our summer. And then as we prepare as a team, what did we miss last year? What could we add? And then based on that, when I receive an intake form or an enrollment from a parent, if I see something, I'm like, okay, I need to know more about this. Or I even have an option, have questions for Christy, email here, right? Or call Christy, whatever. And so if there's something that comes up, like, for example, I had a conversation with a mom this morning. I didn't know she just had a baby. She's in the middle of maternity leave, but her son came to me Monday with dad, right? So I'm painting a picture here. I did know that the boy just turned 3 in April, so he's a young, very beginning student, right? I didn't know mom was postpartum. I didn't know that his second day, mom went back to work a week earlier than anticipated, and he went right back to daycare, right? So all those things combined created this scenario that created more stress for him and a longer trust period for him, right? And so then it created stress for mom and it created, so I made a phone call is what I'm going to say. Oftentimes I will have phone calls with parents with most all of my special needs, not all of them. There may be a minor need, but 98% of my special needs parents, I will have definitely an extensive phone call with them because my CODA, which is an occupational therapy assistant, she serves a large portion of our population of children with autism. And I want her to also have a very good idea of what she's going to be facing. So, our intake form, which is accessible to all the instructors, they have a portal they can log in on. We can preview those things like when you go to the doctor. It's like a profile sheet. And so I try to be as informed of what's coming as I can to help shape that lesson.
A follow-up question to that.
Mhm.
As I like to say, since I've been working in aquatics since the 1900s, I
Yeah.
feel like 20 years ago, parents were reluctant to disclose a lot of that. Do you find that you get good disclosure from your families, or do you really have to help guide them to that conversation to give you the information that you need?
I'm so glad you asked that because yes, there are times we get a form that has nothing on the medical. It just says NA or it just will be blank, right? And the way that my portal is set up and my website is you have to at least acknowledge the question with some kind of an answer to get to the next one to have a complete form to enroll or book. So yes, we do oftentimes have parents who don't disclose. And within a day or two of working with those children, typically we can figure out there's something here, right? And so I will take it upon myself to have a phone call with the parent and just ask, inquire. Oftentimes you find they'll tell you things on the phone they don't want to put in writing for good reason. That's their privacy. But yes, we do have that still sometimes.
And we talked a little bit about that trust piece earlier, but it takes time to build that trust and consistency, especially with, like you mentioned, having those conversations with the parents before or even after when they don't disclose information that you're able to find out early. How do you balance that with the parents' desire to see the progress for the students?
So I try to be as upfront as possible as I can with progress expectations. It's really hard. I think one thing is I've become more bold in if I see a preschooler, like say age 3 to 6 or 8, registered and they're only signed up for 4 lessons, I will reach out to that parent and encourage them to try to get them at least for 8 lessons, right? So that's really important. Number one, I'm often communicating with parents, look at how great they're doing with this. And every Thursday, every child gets a certificate that will amplify their best skill or their hardest challenge that they overcame. And then, a conversation with their instructor that says, we saw this, this, and this is where they are now. So I feel like communicating to them that they know coming to Texas Swim Academy, every child progresses at their own pace and own level and own timeline. And that's pretty well communicated through our website and any conversations we have.
We used to call that the popcorn theory, right? Every
Yeah,
kernel pops at its own time.
it
It's tough
does.
to understand when you're a parent. It's hard to not compare. Christy, let's talk just a little bit more broadly about swim schools in general. What do you think makes a strong swim school culture?
So for us, it's been the transparency with parents, setting boundaries with poolside communication and poolside behavior. We implemented principles slowly and kind of like as a pilot, not really necessarily a real pilot, but like, hey, we're going to start doing some different things about 5 years ago because we had several parents 2 years in a row that were consistently, I'm going to use this word, very berating to Violet. I mean, for example, one mom had her girls in our program for 6 weeks one summer, had them signed up the next year, and sitting poolside as Violet's instructing, and I'm watching Violet, engage and do the things she's been taught to do and does well. And the mom is saying, if you don't learn to swim now, you'll never learn to swim. So, in response to that, I walked over and touched her on the shoulder and asked her to please let Violet finishing. And if she had any questions, she was welcome to speak with me after the lesson. She didn't come back. I lost 2 girls, 14 slots, and they filled up in 48 hours. At midnight that night, before midnight, I contacted my friend who's a counselor, and she talked to me about, why don't you go ahead and get, just become more bold with your TBRI principles, implement it in a parent letter. So I did, and I wrote a letter. My husband edited it, and I just emailed it out to all the parents. And I want you to know I received more positive feedback from community business owners and leaders like dentists and doctors and first responders and nurses about how thankful they were that we're setting boundaries on the culture of our swim academy. So something that happens when parents are negative, or even sometimes they think they might be positive, like, oh, good job, or, you did that. They're talking to their child. There's two other instructors and two other children in the pool, and everyone comes with their own stuff, right? Like, that to you may be encouraging, but to my child who's working with Emma or Violet, they may feel like they're distracted because, oh, well, that parent said something to that kid, but no one's saying anything encouraging to me until I get in the car. It also breaks up the rhythm and cycle of trust building, connection, and power, all the things we do with a child in a lesson progression. So we have communicated pretty clearly that poolside, we ask you to be a silent spectator. And we ask, if you're going to sit on the deck where there's 2 rocking chairs, that observe quietly, encourage at the end, but try not to interrupt. And that is a very hard thing to set the pace for at the beginning, especially like right now when I'm the only one teaching because there's only one child in the water with myself. It's a whole lot easier when there's 3 kids in the water and, 6 or 7 parents and people coming and going. It just becomes a lot easier to observe and implement.
With so much competition in this space, how do you create that environment that helps you either recruit and retain those instructors that help you teach these courses?
So I really can't answer this question clearly. I don't know. I've asked my girls, why do you come back? Well, first of all, Violet told me the first year she was with me, she doesn't have to clean bathrooms. That's a funny thing. That's not serious. But I mean, she had a lot of friends that are lifeguards, at a city pool or another pool, and they have to do a lot of dirty work. I'm not saying my girls don't help me. They set equipment, they put equipment up, but we set a culture of positive environment. Like, we speak positively, and we also don't make it a habit to gossip or speak ill of parents. And if we're going to have reflection about a family, it's going to be as team members, and it's going to be even there a professional conversation, right? Because these are community members and they're people we might interact with and not know. Also, I set a precedence when Violet worked with me the first time. I asked her when the season was over in August, take a break, think about it if you want to come back. And then I reached back out to her in January. And she said, yes, I do. So she came back. And part of that rhythm has been everyone I've added, I've created that space of take a break, reset, let me know what you think. But also at the beginning of February, I ask them their predicted summer schedules, and I allow them to let me know within reason what you need. Pay them well. I mean, they're paid a private instructor rate, which I think is super important. We got a touch of all abilities training from some angelfish. We went through those principles, and I paid for all of them to be CPR trained and certified and update for them all those things. I don't know Daniel exactly, except that we try to create a instructor protective environment where I uphold the respect and professionalism of my instructors very high. And I also protect them by having conversations with parents to kind of provide that separation unless they ask to go ahead and have it. But I try to provide a level of protection, professionalism, and rapport with all of them. I will also add to this, the second year I had Violet, I was reading the book Unreasonable Hospitality, which I think is something that we might talk about in a minute, but it's also, if you haven't read it, you should read it. Anybody in business can benefit from it. Have you read it, Kirsten?
Actually just started it and got the workbook to go with it. It's such
Okay.
a great concept. Yeah.
It's huge. It changed me because I'm like, okay, I like to be reminded. I get in my head a lot and I overthink my own mistakes. Even though it might be one mistake a day, it can ruminate in my head over and over all week. And then I think I'm just a failure, right? So that book just helped me understand the perspective of small details. Like you'll find as you're going through the book, the challenges he had trying to rise to the top. With Violet, I made it a practice to try to find something positive she did weekly, say something to her. But then at the end of the summer that year I read the book, I took parent feedback from the emails, copy and pasted it into a document, and highlighted the things parents said about her. These are your great things that you brought to these kids. This is what parents saw you do great. This is what I saw you do great. This is where we can work on things, right? And she still has those. And now we do that. At the end of the summer, we have a dinner and I go through high lows with all my instructors. We talk about, they give me high lows, well, what were my high lows? And last year it was, please hire an administrative assistant and hire another instructor. And we've done both of those, right? So I implemented those principles, but also I just try to find ways to get them to understand they're an asset to me because they are.
Love that. A lot of times we have a lot of young staff that work for us, but it feels like you're elevating not just your business, but their role in your business, that they're professionals, that they have expertise, that they really is valuable to you. I love that. That's awesome.
Yes, it is.
Speaking about the young people that work for us, we talk a lot about lifeguard in service, right? We're consistently training. Talk to us about some of the ongoing trainings that you do with your instructors to keep them engaged and up to date on new techniques.
So with that, I have one gal who is a lifeguard certified, and we keep up with our CPR certifications every 2 years. If they don't have it, I offer them funding to get it. I require, infant, safety rescue, all those things, but also the notebooks they get from me with their instructional principles and practices and the progress we make within skills and the language we use, those types of things. We focus a lot on swim, float, swim. And so we talk about those things and the importance of seeing those things in our training and getting children to the place of, okay, so say floating is the skill you get and you leave with. Okay, the next summer they come to us, we're going to start with floating and build on that. We also have like risk management discussions about, protocol for situations that happen. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily call it an executive emergency action plan, but it is our plan for response to emergencies. We have a first aid kit. We have CPR masks. Every one of us has one. So if something were to happen, we have that available to us. We're just all risk management minded. Oh, also we have cameras on the property. So that is something to protect my instructors and parents, right? So we navigated that this year with our policies and wording. We don't have per se a lifeguard situation like most swim schools because we have a lifeguard on staff with us in all lessons, and then we're teaching one-on-one. And so it's really not a situation where we're in the water with other people that are doing other things.
Christy, what have you learned about building a team that can carry the same values from lesson to lesson?
So I've learned it's not unique. I mean, it is unique that I have these girls. Not everyone has this. I've talked to several boutique swim school owners as well as larger swim school owners who come into issues with this, streamline. I've learned that building that team creates a foundation of trust in our community that carries through to building more populations coming out here. So the parents seeing and knowing what we're doing and that we're all doing it the same or as close to the same as we can with the same goal in mind and with the same core values being implemented. I just communicate that heavily and writing in their notebook and the way I model. And you don't realize how much you model as the leader until you sit down with them and you ask them high lows. You don't
Yes.
realize the highs you're giving them as a strong leader because I think oftentimes leaders are so hypercritical of themselves. And we too are high performers that we think, oh, well, there's nothing I could be doing right. Right. Like, oh, I saw that thing I did just this week. I have struggled with that sweet boy who had so many transitions in life. And my leaning to push harder, right? And try to challenge him more instead of pulling back. So there's that. So I think, Daniel, to say modeling what you want to see, continually giving them feedback on what they're doing great, giving them constructive criticism, and communicating to your parents about them and in front of them what they're doing great.
I love that. So you've talked a lot about that you live in a small community. You've really built this community around you, but you've also developed different kinds of programs, partnerships, community-based efforts. Your focus on water safety in the community really shows in the work that you're doing with Sherman ISD's Water Safety and Education program. So tell us a little bit about that.
So that came about because I've served on committees with our district since my girls have graduated. Developing relationships within the school district has just been part of my community leadership, just being on committees or being with parents who are still in the school and keeping communication open with school leaders. And implementing that was great. Collins Hope played a great deal of they helped me with that a great deal. Jennifer and their education team, getting the materials here and helping me communicate to the school district how it looks and how it's implemented. And then this year, I was invited to go to a family resource night at another elementary school and just have my table set up with information about what we do. That was an opportunity for me to give out more free resources from Cook Children's and Collins Hope and some Angelfish. Like, it's just a matter of, I think, keeping yourself out there, but also continually communicating back. I just wrote thank you notes today and yesterday to all of our supporters. Funding doesn't come easy. Relationships don't come easy, but I have found the more I continue to reach out and initiate and offer what I have, even if they never respond, at least initiate and end as many communications with, let me know what I can do for you, right? The school community came about because of my service on committees within the school and relationships there, which anybody can form just by calling their education curriculum director or get on your website for your school district and reach out to one of your PE coordinators or reach out to a counselor at one of your local elementary schools. They're always looking for things to implement, especially in May, because there's a lot of downtime and whatever you can bring in to help them fill time is always helpful for them.
Yeah, you talked about that communication piece and kind of just putting yourself out there to see what lands, what sticks. In doing that, you were able to be featured this year as a 2026 AOAP Power Speaker.
Mm.
Can you talk a little bit about what that means to you?
Well, it means a great deal to me. Actually, I had no idea I was even chosen for that until the next day. But one of my colleagues who was chosen with Nashville Dolphins texted me and she said, "Look at us. This is so fun." I'm like, what happened? Like, and the next morning I woke up to the email. I am so honored to have been chosen as a power speaker. I felt like a failure that day. Again, I'm a high performer and I have very high expectations of myself. And it means a great deal to me because that's another piece of work that I have put into educating others to leverage expertise in this field to hopefully continue to do more educating, right? Because that day that I spoke, I thought I had 40 minutes and I had 70. So we stopped at 30 and I was going to do a 10-minute Q&A and we ended up having a 30-minute Q&A, which actually I have been told was probably the most valuable part of that session, being able to have conversations with colleagues. So back to your question, Daniel, it's very much an honor for me. And I mean, you see it on my email signature now because I want people that I communicate to know that, hey, I've I have something to say. And if you need me to help speak into your world, let me know.
So, for listeners who don't know, I'm going to take a step back just a minute and say that we don't choose the power
Who
speakers.
chooses that?
The power speakers comes from the evaluations that we get back on sessions. So, you were
Wow.
chosen because the people in your session, you said across the board in every category that you exceeded. You were one of the top 10 speakers as far as session
Okay.
ratings go.
Wow.
And that's a huge deal. And we take those evaluations very, very seriously. So know that staff did not choose that. That literally came 120 plus sessions, hundreds and hundreds of attendees. And that, so when you see a power speaker, those are folks who have done the work and really made an impact on folks who have come to conference. So speaking of conference, we
Yes.
hope that you'll join us again in
Mhm.
2027. Any sneak peek about what you're working on for
I
conference
haven't
session next year?
I haven't decided just yet. I'm not sure just yet. I have 3 things in my mind, but I don't know. I've thought about touching on the principles of unreasonable hospitality because it made such a huge impact for me in the leadership lane of business ownership. I've also thought about speaking more with more meat to the TBRI because there's so much more I could incorporate in that I think even if someone had attended session in 2026, they would definitely benefit from what I would pour into it for 2027. But I haven't really decided yet. Yeah. But I am coming for sure. And I am submitting a topic. Yes. Yes.
Well, we're
So
excited to see what you
thank
come up
you.
with.
Thank you so much. And I just want to thank my peers. Thank you so much for those that attended and that saw the value in what I shared with you.
Just to kind of circle back around in terms of making sure that we ensure that our children have a safe, positive experience around the water, what do you think still needs that most attention?
I really still think education, which I don't know how to get parents in that lane sometimes. It's hard. I think also focusing on I don't know, this may be a hot topic. I don't know. I'll just say I have found parents see and seek out the value of one-on-one or two-to-one instruction versus um the larger groups that take place at city pools. And I don't want to discount the value of city pool teaching. I'm on our Parks and Rec board. I serve as a chairman and I support them 100%. But I have had parents come to me from places of having received instruction that is large group versus the one-on-one instruction and not even maybe not with my principals, but just the one-on-one interaction, how much more progress can be made and how much focus can be had on the swim, float, swim principles that we focus on here. I mean, we have 3 and 4 year olds that are leaving our program in one summer doing that because it's such a focus for us, right? It's not ISR. It's just simply, teach them the float, teach them the propelling on their belly, teach them to roll over, and then teach them, all the climate, all that. I think Daniel, focusing on education, but also I think equipping instructors with focus of drowning prevention versus skills, right? So skill progression is absolutely important when it comes to stroke development, but drowning prevention skills are top. And so for us, we always start with drowning prevention skills. Communicating to wait before you get in, communicating to make sure an adult is ready for you. Are you ready? High five. Communicating, I'm tired, teaching them to feel they're tired, find the wall, navigate to an exit, all those things. I really believe continuing to focus on drowning prevention because kids don't know what they don't know. And when we talk about 5 seconds underwater, or when we talk about it's really not safe to swim with friends unless they're an adult, and when we talk about life jacket safety, I think incorporating those conversations as much as we can is just ultimately important.
I love that. And it aligns so much with the new guidelines from American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. National Water Safety Action Plan that really talks about water competency development over just learning how to swim. Yeah, I love it. That's awesome.
I appreciate that. It's great.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and jump into our lightning round. Quick questions, quick answers. All right.
Yes. Okay.
All right. What is one thing every swim instructor can do to better support a nervous swimmer?
Slow the pace, engage with them in conversation that allows them to share about themselves and let them lead what you're doing next. Mm.
Awesome. What's one lesson structure that tends to work well for swimmers with unique learning needs?
So with special needs, especially I'll talk about Emery, my Down syndrome, one of my Down syndrome students, she can now swim after 3 years. We initially had a progression set up where she would get in with me and I would work with her, right? We quickly implemented mom in the sessions and she continued to get in the water with us for 2 summers. Last summer, towards the end and into the fall of October, mom quit getting in the water. So that's, I think, a lesson structure that's completely different than anything that most people see. That, and then also I had, high performer, high fearful 5-year-old come last year, first time. Mom got in fully clothed, handed her baby off to another parent. The boy, wasn't taking to what she wanted. So she got in and immediately he regulated, right? He just got to a place where he could work with she and I. And then she didn't have to get in again. It was just a matter of mom getting in to help him literally break the ice of this new environment. And also letting kids explore the properties of the water before we engage in a lesson. So usually 3 to 5 minutes we spend with our children with autism, letting them just feel the water. And to some, it may look extremely unproductive because we're in a corner, we're trying to keep them, contained, and they're just literally just feeling the water. And that's important for them to be able to come to a place of physiological regulation so that we can then engage in a lesson with them. Yeah.
It's that sensory piece that kind of goes with that.
Yes, it's huge. Yeah. Yeah.
What is the most important quality in a great swim teacher?
Flexibility, for sure. I mean, flexibility, integrity, also patience with the kids, the way they interact with kids. All of my girls come from a place of having babysat, served children, or leadership within the schools of mentorship. So I think understanding that all children are different, number one, understanding that the kids progress at a different level and being able to engage with them as they are as individuals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Christy, what do you think is a misconception that people still have about adaptive swim instruction?
I think some people think it's not really worth it, or they think, "Oh, I can receive adaptive instruction in a large group." There's a place in Dallas that provides some water acclimation with Down syndrome children, and it's not at all what we do. And I had parents come to me with children with Down syndrome say, "We thought we were going to go and get something," and they just were playing in the water. Playing with children with special needs in the water is fun. It is good. But I truly think some people don't believe these kids are capable of learning the skill of swimming to their ability. And their skill progression and their stroke development will not look like a mainstream child, right? My swim squad kids are working on stroke development. They're working on endurance. A child with special needs is going to continue practicing and working on swim, float, swim, or jumping in and getting to the side, a safety skill rather than progressing in the same timeline with stroke development and competition.
What gives you the most optimism about the future of water safety?
When I see kids overcome things and they progress, seriously. And when I also hear parents say, "Oh my gosh, thank you for that book. I read it to my child." They're learning. Parents are learning and implementing drowning prevention education at home, but also just seeing the number of people that attend conference grow. Like I attended AOAP at Broadmoor, I think it was 2023 or 24. So just seeing the community of people that see the need for it and are doing something about it helps me feel optimistic. Seeing the momentum behind equipping and continuing to educate.
Excellent. Christy, thank you so much for joining us today. Your perspective that you bring to the way you teach and lead and just water safety in general is really exciting to hear. And I think it reminds us that the thoughtful instruction and building strong relationships can really make a difference for swimmers and families and instructors too. And I'm so excited that we'll see you in Reno
Yeah,
in
yeah.
2027 and hear what you have to talk about and also discuss unreasonable hospitality with you.
Yes, I can't wait. I'm glad you're reading it. That's good.
I am. I'm very
That's good.
excited.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. We will include any of the links for your resources and relevant AOAP information in our show notes. We hope this conversation gives listeners practical ideas that they can use in their own lessons, programs, and
Yeah.
communities. To learn more about the Association of Aquatic Professionals, our training, conference, and resources, visit aquaticpros.org. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on AOAP's Discussion from the Deep End, a podcast made for aquatic professionals by aquatic professionals.